I'm back, and I'm leading off the summer sermon series at my local synagogue, and I'm sharing this with whoever is going to be seeing this. Before I get started, I just want to mention one thing quickly. In the past week, we had a 50th reunion of our junior high school class, and it was fun to get together with people, and I was able to locate our homeroom teacher, who is a math teacher. And as an adult, I can say that, especially with the book of Numbers, is what we're reading, that there's an obvious tie-in, but the importance of lifelong learning to be shared with students who you can also bounce things off is something that is really, I can't put it into better words. Somebody else could make it seem a little bit more flowery, but I just want to give my thanks to everybody on this. And let's get down to business here. So, independence, oxymorons, agnates, cognates, and other big words. A guten Shabbos, allemen sitzen du in Schulerein und a Reusen Lebenteichland. A good Shabbos to everybody, whether you're sitting in shul or watching out on the live stream. If you'll recall, in my last Devar Torah, I spoke of our religion being of deed over creed. So an expression of Hakeres HaTov is in order. It would smack of ingratitude not to acknowledge the events, some of which transpired right in our backyard, that were taking place some 245 years ago. In an era when he was performing a myriad of feats, such as crossing the Delaware, George Washington was depicted as a great lawgiver, an outstanding civil leader, and a virtuous man. If we take to heart Chazal's commentary on Ovadia, that there is wisdom among the nations, the similarities to Moshe Rabbeinu are many, as indicated in some of my casual reading of Christianity Today. Washington's life and death, it noted, helped verify that Americans were God's chosen people who must faithfully follow his laws and serve as an example of true religion and liberty for the world. It may not quite be the replacement theology that has put the Jewish people on guard over the ages, but President Washington would look upon the Jewish people favorably, waxing on about toleration and religious liberty in addressing the Hebrew congregations of Newport, Rhode Island. Our National Independence Day shares some parallel themes with Parshat Pinchas. The loyalists and patriots were already residing in their new providences. Bnei Yisrael would be leaning on Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence, on the precipice of entering their promised land. Censuses were taken which had military implications. Marching across the lands were not quite the peaceful armies joined as bands, walking hand in hand to anthems sung where they would once stand. History would record the upstart colonists transitioning to Americans whose judicial interpretations of often confusing foundational documents have provided us with such descriptive terms as constitutional originalists and pragmatists. In retrospect, the framers could only have hoped to have held a candle to our sages over the ages that have been diligently engaging in Talmud study. Grammarians and historians can debate whether the phrase, a more perfect union, could ever literally have been possible. Tzulov Chad's daughters had a better deal, contrasted with the likes of Elizabeth Cady Stanton, whose 1848 convening of the Declaration of Sentiments at the Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York, spotlighted the Declaration of Independence by drawing attention to the fraught meaning of the word men as used in America's foundational documents. while Stanton would functionally become a standard bearer for minorities' rights, the Torah instead speaks of responsibilities, many of which are specific to the land which Moses would see from his vantage point after having ascended Mount Avarim. There are lots of other interesting names in American history, but there's no shortage of names mentioned in our Sedra. Depending on how you read it, Yerida L'Tzorech Aliyah, what goes down comes up. There were 70 family units anticipating Aliyah, which correspond in contrast to the 70 that descended to Mitzrayim. Tzlofchad's clan was unique in having no living men. What with Moses and Eleazar of high repute conducting it, census shenanigans are being discounted. Tzlofchad's 5 alert daughters spoke up in unison, framing their query on their land allocation as one of agnatic honor over cognate succession. Time would be of the essence. Had the quintet waited for the end of the 4th Aliyah's reading, they may have had to have relied on oracles and their interpretations of breastplates, stones, shines, and glares, which interestingly were just discussed in our current Daf Yomi tractate Yoma. Moses would get a direct, detailed answer from God, subject to prospective revisions with agnatic and cognatic implications. But what would be the coordinates and boundaries of Tzlofchad's daughter's lands allotment? The bigger question is, how was the promised land to be apportioned? In many ways, then as now, is schwer zu sein Yid. Let's refer to the book of Numbers, chapter 26, verses 51 through 55, page 924, in the red Eitz Chaim Chumash, which is where I will have started my laning today. It reminds me of the 3 words relatively young adult parents, and perhaps my daughter and son-in-law are already experiencing it, the 3 words relatively young adult parents hate regarding toys and furniture. Some assembly required, which inevitably are accompanied by instructions composed in a far-off land, seemingly run through inferior translation apps. With larger groups, increase the share. With smaller groups, reduce the share. Says the first instruction, a chalutzin extreme. Each portion shall be assigned by lot, whether for larger or smaller groups, reads the second instruction. Huh? Anechte getug. The Yiddish oxymoronic expression, a night day, is appropriate. Joshua's impending conquest, coupled with the Benot Tzlofchad toponymic approach concerning the archaeological find known as the Samaria Ostraca, support the notion that the second instruction ruled. Nevertheless, the sages had to harmonize these conflicting dicta, providing the Mefoshim opportunities for commentaries. Rashi took the textual literalist approach that Al-Pi, the land, spoke out according to divine will, presupposing similar wording in the book of Joshua, but disregards the first instruction. Nachmanides takes more of a pragmatic approach, reading it to apply the second instruction to divide the land equally into 12 tribal portions, which would then be apportioned to their particular allotments by clan's need. Perhaps, with the benefit of living and trending to post-medieval times, Abravanel logically discounted both those scenarios and proposed his own idea of qualitative assessment allocation. The location would be determined by lot to forestall internecine strife, and each tribal holding was based on objective census data. This time, it's 3 Jews and 3 opinions. But a somewhat prevailing view is Abravanel carries the day. In chanting the Hebrew, I found it interesting that such a fraught little word as ach in verse 55 did not have its own distinct cantillation and is traditionally elided into the next word. It seems every Chumash has a different translation for this monosyllable. A very pregnant, however so noted, but instead suits me better. Why use such difficult language? Witness phrases such as Second Amendment, separate but equal, alternative facts, and cognitive dissonance, even the relative moderns among us have difficulties formulating and following instructions. Perhaps it's all an ongoing part of creation, calling on mankind to be God's partner to effect tikkun olam as many know it today, and so make for a sustaining just and rightful society. Regarding Torah and its study, Ben Bagbag said in Pirkei Avot to turn it over and over again with the understanding that everything is in it. Maimonides concurs, and I'll submit it for your approval. Shabbat Shalom, and stay safe this Independence Day. Okay, so I am maybe a couple of seconds over my 10-minute allotment, so I hope to keep everybody engaged. I thank you for indulging my sense of humor on this, but I'm doing so respectfully. And seriously, all of you, stay well and be careful of those fireworks. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.